Yeah, he is insane today. Today, he is insane. Swanky Goose, how you doing? Cal, how you doing, brother? Good to see you. Rick Roll, thank you for the likes, guys. Yeah, that will definitely help. We should find me over here. Arcane. Okay. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Remind me where you are in the country, Cal? Bigfoot Electro is a great handle. Vasco. What's up, everybody? 3. Oh, you're also in SoCal. Where? We're in SoCal. Jeff Wilson, Susie. Because I might be doing some get-togethers around all kinds of interesting things. Let me know where in SoCal. Welcome, everybody. Today we're doing a slightly late episode. I was out spending some time with a friend. I look like Jesus. Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. Alex T. I can't read that. Hello, everyone. Wonderlust. Corona. Corona. Wait, why is it so familiar? Oh, Corona. That's like east, right? On the 210, it's east and then south. I remember Corona. Corona is a cool place. So, to anybody who doesn't know, this channel usually revolves around the simulation hypothesis. My name is Danny, and I'm claiming to have found proof that we live in a simulation. And we're meeting here daily to discuss all kinds of fun things like science, religion, spirituality. Yesterday, we started talking about Elon Musk, which apparently is a contentious subject, which I will never understand why, but apparently it is. Mary, what's up? Hello to people on YouTube, whoever's joining. Today's a relatively late episode, and we're gonna. What does that mean, John? By the way, I wonder why TikTok does not allow for hyperlinks. It is strange. Maybe because they want to keep everybody on the platform, right? That's probably the idea. Hello, everyone. Linda, Kat. Okay, so how many here are? We're just gonna pick up on yesterday's subject, and then we'll slide into whatever feels natural. So, in the context of the next part of the simulation, or the next part of human evolution, maybe the light will help us also. Probably will. There you go. That's better. Talking about people who are influencing the future. Some people might think for better. Some people think for worse. But we're talking about Elon Musk in the context of the future of humanity. Usually, we're talking about the simulation hypothesis, science, religion, spirituality. My name is Denny, and I'm claiming to have found proof that we live in a simulation. Anybody who's not familiar with my channel, I can tell you what the method is. But to anybody who knows, we are discussing all kinds of fun daily topics. My proposition is that if you project a diffracted laser on the surface and you're under the influence of a particular molecule, you will see code running in surfaces. We now have over 1,000 replications worldwide, and we're meeting here daily to discuss all kinds of adjacent subjects. And once again, today's contentious subject is Elon Musk. Not really necessarily the only thing we're going to be talking about, but this is what we talked about yesterday. And I would like to pick up the subject because I want to explore why people hate the guy so much. I mean, I understand he's a person with a lot of influence, but unless you worked for him directly and interact with him directly, the big suspicion is what I'm sure that we can find people here who don't like the guy, right? So is the big suspicion that he has too much power and might misuse that power? Is that what it is? Nobody has an opinion. Strange. What's up, Soulflow? How you doing, man? Another host and go live together. Interesting. All right. Well, I see nobody here today has an opinion on the subject, so I guess I'll just express mine. So, one thing that is not clear to me. Oh, how you doing, man? Yeah, yesterday we started talking towards the end. We started talking about Elon Musk. For some reason, is a contentious subject, and I understand there's a lot of people that dislike him. To me, it was always a mystery as to why. Aside from the fact that obviously, he has a lot of influence. Musk has done some good things. Buying Twitter was a bit strange. Waste of time when you look at other things he's working on. Yeah, well, considering the fact that he makes his calculations in a particular way, and the fact that it cost him what 54 billion. What is it? What did it cost him? Something insane, right? What did he buy Twitter for? That's not chop change, right? So I would assume that he thought it was worth it. I mean, obviously, he can make mistakes, and I'm sure he does quite often. You don't trust any billionaire. Thank you for your input, Blake. 44 billion. Was that cash and unmarked bills? That would be cool. Just meet somebody under a bridge. Did you just ban UK government from threatening to arrest people for a hate speech? Oh, I don't know anything about that. Wasn't really following anything recent, to be honest. I guess I'm just asking. So, for example, what Blake just said, right? This is something I've heard often said. I don't trust any billionaire, which is to me is obviously, Blake, you're not alone. You're in a company of many that think this way. But I never understood this position because in the end of the day, people got to where they were in a particular way, right? So we got to look at the track records of somebody and how they got there and what they represent over time, because people don't usually just change, right? If they got there by focusing on a particular trajectory, trying to develop a certain thing, they don't just all of a sudden change and change what they trying to achieve in the world. So if he put everything he had on the line multiple times just to make a technology work, why would you think that all of a sudden, because he has billions, he would stop doing that? 44 billion, no, that's a lot of money, man. Cars are ugly too. Well, that's not a reason to hate the guy, right? He doesn't say anything profound. I think he just knows how to pick product and people. He's donating to Trump. You can only get there by exploitation. Yeah. Did you ever, Blake? Did you ever read anything about him? Like, did you ever read one of his biographies or follow closely exactly how he got to where he got? Donating to Trump. But these are all good reasons. Keep them coming. This is interesting for me. Doesn't say anything profound. I think he just knows how to pick products and people. Well, first of all, I would say that, Lizzie, thank you for your comment. I would say that even that alone, if that would actually be the only thing he's good at, that's still by itself quite a skill, considering the size of the organizations that he's built, right? But also, from what I understand, he himself is heavily involved in the actual development and the design of a lot of the actual engineering of the products. Yes, it is one. Oh, you mean like, yeah, it's a good skill, yeah. But also, so I will pose this because this is truly an open discussion. This is not an attempt to prove a point. I'm genuinely interested in where this seething hate comes from, or hate to any degree towards different people with a lot of power. But obviously, people are different, and so specifically, we were talking about Musk yesterday, and he happens to be somebody who I showed some interest in, and then I, obviously read a lot about him and how he got to where he got. So I'm trying to explore where these ideas come from. And so this is super helpful. And the question for me is, Lizzie, for example, did you read any of his biographies or anything about the specifics of how I got to be who he is? Yes, I'm endlessly fascinated by his former relationship with that weird DJ girl. You're talking about what's her face? Grimes. But do you know anything about his earlier life? Like anything about how he got to where he got? And a question for you, Lizzie, as well. Do you know anything about his earlier life and how he got to be where he is? Everything I've read says he's nuts. Did you read the biography about him by Isaacson, the recent one? Quasar? And SoFlo, if you want to give me some details, because I honestly wasn't following recently. I was kind of busy recently, but what was the thing with the UK? What is the thing there? Blake Grimes has some interesting music, for sure. Yeah, so I guess the reason I'm asking is because ultimately we want humans that are capable of doing big things, right? To me, it seems like Elon is not really interested in or doesn't care that much about individual people, but he cares about humanity as a whole. He cares about these technologies working because he knows he has the capability of making these changes. So, because he was basically talking about this stuff since he was a teenager, right? So his track record is basically tracks from the beginning. You can't get there by exploitation. And it is interesting to me that it's kind of like a political conversation, right? But it, like in my mind, it shouldn't be. No, he's not interesting enough for me to read about. I just watch YouTube vids he puts out. Just in the last couple of days, UK has threatened the right about hate speech. Oh, I see. Interesting. I got to look deeper into it. So, a person who innovated in 3 different industries is not interesting enough for you? What kind of people interest you usually? Because it is, it takes all kinds of people. People are interested in all kinds of people depending on what their life is. And this is not even necessarily a big hobby horse for me. I'm just fascinated by I have friends that share these opinions that you guys are expressing right now. I never truly understand them, and that's why I guess I'm asking. Because from my understanding of human beings and like everything I'm watching him ever talk about and everything I read about him, I don't see one fake bone in his body. Like I don't know what else you want to expect from a person. Like nobody's saying that he's perfect. And for example, in his latest biography by Isaacson, to whomever doesn't know, he wrote like the biggest biographies, about Einstein and Jobs, and I think he did Newton as well. I'm not sure. No, I don't think he ever did Newton. But anyways, that's kind of like what he's known for. And Isaacson writes very honestly, so that's his reputation. So he basically doesn't hold back when it comes to describing the faults of a person. And he definitely doesn't paint like the rosiest picture of Elon, that's for sure. And it's clear that Elon is can be extremely hard on his employees to the extent that some people would call abusive, and not very tolerant towards certain kinds of mishaps, let's say. So there's no question that on that front, he definitely has a lot to work to do as a person on his personality side. But in general, it seems to me pretty clear that is a net positive influence on humanity because of the type of development that he brought about that simply wouldn't exist without him. So, like, he changed the trajectory of innovation of rockets that NASA couldn't do for like 30 years, right? And to all the people that say, well, it wasn't him. No, it was him. It was definitely him. He came up all with the original plan, and the implementation of it was actually heavily resting on his designs. He later brought experts, but it was definitely him. It was not anybody else. So in that context, would you say that if humanity eventually has to learn how to get off the planet, right? If we are to at some point learn how to embark to other planets, that we have to do that eventually because sooner or later the sun will, engulf the Earth. So we have to learn how to do it at some point. So in the context of that, the fact that this whole industry, forget about cars and all this, I was just talk about SpaceX, let's say. In the context of that, the stagnation that existed until that point, that nobody was really innovating in that because everything is red taped and everything is under government contracts that cost millions and billions of dollars for no reason. Just the fact that he innovated there and managed to get us to a point where we actually have a chance of start getting off the planet before we get buried under space rubble. Would you say, and genuine question, would you guys say that it's, even if he can be a person that can be a dick to his employees. That, by the way, many of them, kind of have to weigh that against the fact that they get bored everywhere else, because they themselves admit that you really don't do that of like these kind of interesting things anywhere else. A lot of people like kind of leave and then they come back because of it. So would you say that it's better to have someone like that if we don't have a choice? Now, obviously, it'd be better if we have somebody who's that innovative, but at the same time also a good person and treats people nicely. Of course, everybody would agree to that. But if, let's say, you have to choose to not have a person like that, or to have a person like that who have a lot of personality faults that kind of hurt people on the personal level, would you not say that for humanity as it's a net positive? Let's see. Just in the last couple of days, you can. Oh, we read this. The things he said. Wait, the things he says aren't really that interesting. I think you really just picks winning products. Well, no, he's designing them. So like his main thing is actually being involved heavily um in the actual engineering of it. So he's not just picking products. Like you need to be able to do heavy engineering to understand what things actually work there. And it just so you know, this is like just a simple fact. This is not a contentious point. Like he's actually engineering a lot of this stuff, and obviously he has experts to dial it in. But the ideas, a lot of them are his ideas. If you listen to him, what he has said that grabbed your attention, yeah, many things. So it's not that the things he's saying are that profound. He's not an inspirational speaker. It's what he executes. So like think about it this way. Um, the smartest people on the planet work for these companies, right? People who are that smart don't usually go to places uh, unless it's really interesting, because they have options. So the fact that, so for example, I don't understand this whole like just the fact that he made rockets that can come back, just that alone, which is like the biggest innovation in rocketry since what, 50 years. And everybody told him that cannot be done. So I don't know if you know the story. Okay, so I'll tell you what, for example, makes me think that is an outstanding human being outside of what Elon to be today, because he's just a very famous person. So obviously, it's very easy to think of like, well, anything bad you're going to say about Elon, you're just punching up, so it's no problem. But you have to kind of take the context of the entire thing. So I'll tell you what grabbed me about Elon originally. So I don't know if you know this, but the way that SpaceX was created was that he had an idea when he got his first money, like real money from PayPal. He got something, I don't remember what it was, but like a really good money. Like I think it was like 260 million or something. And I think it was 26 at the time. And well, imagine what a 26-year-old would do usually when they get that kind of money. They either retire or they go and like invest in some, they can just relax, right? And this also should tell you like why Elon actually, it's clear that he doesn't really care about the money at all. So the second that he got that, what he did is took half the money, and what he wanted to do is to basically essentially throw the money away towards, he wanted to get a rocket, which the only rocket like that existed at the time in the world was in Russia. So because America didn't really, like, you couldn't go to NASA and like buy these rockets, but Russia would sell them technically. So he went to Russia and he tried to get the only rocket that could technically get to Mars. And his idea was, well, how about I get this rocket, and then I put a plant on it, and a camera, and a robot that's going to plant the plant on Mars. The idea was that he kind of, he grew up on uh, sci-fi, so he like, the whole like race to space, like that really was something that was very appealing to him, humanity in space, right? So he's like, kids growing up today, his idea was, and they don't really care about going out there. Like nobody cares about that. Why? Because there's nothing really inspiring or innovative in that space. It's like, well, how about we take this rocket, we put a plant on it, we send it to Mars, and then the plant is going to be planted on Mars, and then we're going to have a live feed of the plant growing on Mars. And that, his hope was, will basically inspire the kids of the future to want to innovate in the space of going to space, which is, I don't know if you agree or not, but I think it's extremely important, because It's just a matter of time before we're going to have to get off the planet at some point, even though the sun will become a red giant only in a billion years from now. Still, at some point, you got to start doing that, right? Somebody has to start doing that. And nobody was doing that. So that was his idea. So just think about the philanthropic idea here, which is I'm going to throw away half of my money. This is not a business investment, right? You're not going to see the rocket back. You're not going to see the plane back. His whole thing was like, look, I just want to inspire this next generation. Now, you can always, try and play the game of like, well, maybe this is just a publicity stunt to make them look good. I mean, you can say that about everything. There's actually no reason to believe that this story is not true. It's in Isaacson's research. This part is true. Okay, so that's the mind that you're dealing with here, and this is not the only time that he was willing to put everything on the line. He did the same thing with Tesla. He did, So what happened was he tried to go to Russia and do these meetings about these rockets, and it lasted for like 2 or 3 years. And in order to get to some understanding about what's going on, because he knew close to nothing about rockets, so he got 2 famous NASA scientists who always accompanied him. He went with him to Russia to help him negotiate and understand the details about the rockets. And then one day he realized that basically the Russians were just yanking him around. Like they were just like making fun of him, essentially. He was like, look at this rich idiot just comes here and tries to meet with us and all that stuff. And then there was one fateful meeting where basically it kind of all blew up. He realized they're just making fun of him. So they stormed out. They left the meeting. He realized that's not happening. On the plane back, this is a true story. On the plane back, that was obviously, verified with the 2 NASA scientists. They're sitting in the seat behind him, and they're like, all right, it's done, it's over. They start drinking, right? It's like whatever. An hour into the flight, Elon turns to them. He shows them a schematic that he built, like with budgets and also how they're going to complete it, and is like, I think we can do this. And they're like, do what? He's like, I think we can build our own rockets. So they obviously just started laughing at him because they spent like 20, 30 years in NASA. He doesn't know anything about rockets. They're like, what the fuck do you think you are, right? So they started laughing. This is a true story. They take the paper and they look at it for 2 seconds. And then after a minute of looking at it, they stop laughing. Because they realize, oh shit, like in 1 hour, because he just basically read everything he could about rockets while they were doing all these trips, and he built a whole plan of how to do it. They stopped laughing, and then they knew that they're not dealing with just a regular guy. Okay, so this is who Elon is. Like he would just get into. He doesn't care about anything but the mission and what he believes is right. Now he can be wrong about what's right, obviously, but that feeling, that sense of mission, that drive, is what got him to where he is. Not because he, like people say, pick the right people and steal it. I'm certain that he stepped over people. When you have that amount of power and your track record is that big, undoubtedly it will always happen that some people get sucked into the machine and get spit out from the other side without the credit. It will always happen. It's just the nature of the size of the game, right? And by no means do I think that there's not things that Elon can work on himself as a person and be a better person. There's no question about that. I don't know if I would ever want to work for someone like Elon because it sounds like a nightmare. But also at the same time, that drive, that thing, that's who he is. Or when he, the surges that he orders where he's involved personally in them, which means, he sleeps in the factory. All of these are not publicity stunts. This is all true. Like his sense of mission, his work ethics, all of that stuff. All of this is true. He's not some guy who just sits in some ivory tower, picks people and tells them what to do. He himself goes and does what needs to be done to show an example. And then he basically pulls all the people. Now, when you get to a certain size, obviously, you're going to have a lot more delegation. You have a lot more of that stuff going on. But this is who Elon is at the core. And, when Tesla was basically going down and everybody were against them, he put every single dime he had. He needed to borrow money to pay rent. All these stories are real, right? So he puts everything on the line every single time, no matter the size of the risk. And you can say, well, he knows a lot of powerful people. He will always get by. Fine, but you can always play that game. The point for me, to your question, Lizzie, it's not what he says. It's his track record of doing, of staying there no matter what. and doing what he believes is right. That's what grabs me about Elon as a person. It's not the the how profound what he said on a podcast is. Let's see. I went it for quite a while, so let me look at your comments now. Lauren Isley, check his book out. No, I've not heard. Is it worth it? Why? You want to tell me specifically why? Eric Doggin, how are you, by the way? Good to see you. Lauren Isley, I'll say Lauren. Let's see. And there's no inherent justice to the universe. It's so indifferent to us, yet created us. Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos are also working with rockets, like all have personal space race. Yeah, but no, they're not in the same ballpark of working on it. So like Richard Branson is focusing specifically on tourism in space, which is not really in space. Space is way further out. Bezos is not involved directly with the engineering of the rockets and is not really close to the science. He's just paying for the thing. So both of the Richard and Jeff, they both are definitely just picking the right people for the right job. The difference between them and Elon is that Elon directly involved with the engineering and the actual science. Also, the fact that he kind of takes these ideas that seem to be impossible and then makes them possible on a regular basis. He did it with SpaceX, which he made rockets land that they couldn't do it before, right? Made big rockets, which is the majority of the issue with reusable rockets and the cost. And also his focus on actually getting people off the planet if they need to do that, right? That neither Richard or Jeff are involved in that size of a project. There's no comparison there. Elon also, now this is much more arguable because there's a lot of arguments whether or not even electric cars is like actually the way to go. But at least in the self-driving department, data department, innovating with the actual robotics of it, I'm not talking about the humanoid robot. I'm talking about just the cars themselves. Obviously, you can't compare the quality of Porsches or Teslas. That's for sure. But hey, they made the fastest car in the world without knowing anything about cars up to 10 years before. They're competing with whatever you want to say, but as far as their marketing, as far as like the actual performance of the car, there's no question that the cars definitely have some value, right? And again, this is much more contentious just because not everybody agrees that the electric cars is the way to go to resolve the thing. So that's fine. Now you have Neuralink, right? Another domain in which is just like crazy to innovate in. And you have already one person. Everybody said, "Oh, it's not going to happen until 2030." Well, you have a person with a Neuralink in their brain now, and it's 2024. Okay, so I don't know when people are going to start seeing that the track record actually holds, right? Whether you think he's a good person, the actual output is there, right? And again, if for example, if they manage to do what they want to do, which is solve a lot of big issues like paraplegic people, blind people, things like that, like you wouldn't think that that's a net good for humanity. Just got here. It's my space. GDX, we're talking before. How you doing, Spook? Wait, I find it hard to be. What do you mean by that, Lizzie? You said I find it hard to be. Or you meant to say you find it hard to believe? And then if so, you find what hard to believe specifically? Is there any way to describe the size of the symbols you see in the diffracted light? Yeah, the size is very small in the beginning. You see, so anybody who doesn't know, I figured out that if you project a diffracted laser on the surface and you are on a particular molecule that I cannot name on the live chat, you would see code running in surfaces. So that's why my channel exists, and that's around this discovery mostly. The symbols they almost look microscopic in the beginning, and then over time you start seeing more and more and more of them with more fidelity, and you even see larger structures. Elon, I don't know what to make of him. Yeah, well, I think that's a fair statement, Eric Doggin. The world teacher, I see you, brother. Follow your light. Thank you. That makes me feel very good. Laughing because he doesn't sound smart, but then I don't know how to explain. Lizzie does. I think that what you're picking up on, Lizzie, is that he has a billion things happening in his head in every single second. I think he's competing with the amount of information going through his head, and in order to say things, you need to pause that level of thought. No, he's definitely Elon is definitely a genius. There's no question about that. I don't think that's an exaggeration to say that. Let's talk about the simulation. Let's do it. There's something I can't figure about him. Yeah. Well, again, this is a true conversation. I have a lot of friends, also very smart friends, who don't like him at all. So again, you guys are in good company. I'm not holding it against you. I'm just truly trying to understand. To the extent that I can understand humans, which I always held deep interest in human beings and how they behave and their mannerisms and all that stuff. And every time my friends express this doubt or even hate towards Elon, I if I have enough energy, I'll rebuttal it. Like obviously, we would have like a lively discussion, but I'm always allowing myself to be influenced. Like I'm not closed to anybody's input. So after discussions of that flavor in particular, whenever I see Elon talking on the next appearance on media, I'm looking closely. I'm like, okay, is there something I'm missing? Truly, like I'm open. Okay, let's see. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm looking at him again. Like I'm thinking about all the information that I know about him, looking at how he behaves, right? And I have to tell you, that doesn't mean that I can't be wrong. Of course, I can be royally wrong, absolutely. But so far, with everything I'm seeing, I don't see one iota of dishonest bone in his body. He can be a dick. There's no question about it. That's clear, right? But he's extremely authentic. Everything he says, he means. He speaks exactly what his conviction is. There's no hidden corners. There's no, like none of that. I don't see any of that. And I mean, I don't know what else you want to like, especially with someone with that much influence. What else you can expect? It's like they're gonna have their mood swings. They're gonna have their demon mode. They're gonna have everything. But if as long as they say what they mean, without all the crazy, masks and all that stuff, I don't know what else you can ask from a person, especially in that kind of a position. That's my position there. He's from the future. Yeah, it feels that way. Can you tell us about the first time you discovered this? Yes, I agree. Dog and I agree. I can't grip on him. Hyperloop went nowhere though. Hyperloop was something that he wasn't developing it, just so you know, SoFlo. Hyperloop is something that he knew that he doesn't have time for, so he basically kind of uttered that idea and he gave it to the world to execute. And then if it didn't go anywhere, that means that the people who are developing it are not really doing anything with it. We have one person who loves Elon. I've seen a picture of Elon in demon mode. The Boring Company. The Boring Company is not Hyperloop, just to be clear. And Toy Tron Max, how are you? Yeah, and again, Elon will be the first one to admit that he knows about demon mode. This is another thing. That he has a lot of self-awareness of all his craziness. We all have, we're all troubled in some way. Elon has a lot of traumas. There's no question about that, from growing up and the stuff that he witnessed when he was a kid, and also the way that his father treated him. Right. So, is it an excuse? No, but is it an excuse for anybody? My fiance always says, like, some people are just dicks for no reason. At least he can be a big dick to people in demon mode, but the output is there, right? So you got to weigh one against the other. He puts out a lot of YouTube vids that don't have much content. How you feel about that? I don't quite understand what that means, Lizzie. What do you mean by he puts out a lot of YouTube videos that doesn't have much content? I'm not sure what you mean by that. As for Spook is asking, you guys can keep the things about Elon coming if you want. In the meanwhile, I'll address some other things that I see Spook is asking. Tell us about the first time you discovered this. Yeah, the first time that the laser discovery came. Wait, seeing the babysitter of Elon Vid. No, no, I didn't. But again, that's not how I would measure Elon. Like, there's no question that Elon has some major, major demons. Again, if you read the Isaacson's book about him, he doesn't hold back on any of this stuff. Like, he describes it very well, like how abusive it can be to employees or how traumatizing it can be for employees. Um, I see them all the time and I watch them, but he doesn't say much in them. Again, Lizzie, he's not a motivational speaker. He would always have the same thing to say because he's an engineer. That's his thought process. I don't see why that would be the measure. The Elon Musk babysitter story is quite weird. Okay, well, I got to look into it. I don't know what is the discussion there. They said he wasn't the anti-joint, but he would introduce the mark. I don't know what that means. Okay, so Spook, to your question, I'm working on a documentary right now with Aaron Vanden that's going to describe all the details. But the gist of it is that I followed some clues that appeared for me because I was fascinated by the idea of why the molecule space looks so realistic. And eventually, after years of thinking about it and investigation, I kind of landed on this idea that the diffracted laser is supposed to do something. And when I tried it, I saw the code, and then I started showing people, and everybody started seeing it, and that's the short version of the story. But there's going to be a lot of details in the documentary. So that's what the babysitting. Well, you'll excuse me, Tetron Max, if I'm not gonna take the. First of all, I don't know exactly what is the story. Second of all, I don't know what you mean by what you just said about the mark. I don't know what that means. Second of all, there's no hyperlinks here. So if you want to just send me the name Tetron Max, if you can just DM me either the name of the video on YouTube or something like that. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. But also, again, I don't really. What I mean is that I actually don't know what you meant by what you said about the mark. I actually don't know what these words mean. And also, whatever it is, you have the body of track record of his interaction with, I think at this point, tens of thousands of people, right, in his companies and his like that all have the potential to go public about whatever, and you have a lot of instances of people saying it's exhausting to work for him and it's you get into burnout quickly. A lot of these people, however, say that we try and go work somewhere else, but we want to come back because it's boring everywhere else in comparison. And even his ex-wife, well, I don't know if you saw, but there's like this TED talk that she gave, and she definitely, has reasons to uh, talk shit about Elon, but ultimately, she herself admits that ultimately, yeah, he's not the best husband, but he's an incredible father, which says a lot in considering how busy he is, and he is ultimately an incredible influence on humanity because he does all this innovation. He's just not a people's person, but this is why I'm asking. Like, you got to weigh one against the other. One thing I can tell you that is absolutely cannot possibly be true because I don't even know how people get to this kind of utterance, which is that he himself like doesn't actually do any of the work. Like, he just hires people to do the work. It's like this doesn't compute. Like, people that are that smart don't work for somebody who's not also that smart and has a vision that they themselves see that is worth being a part of, right? But also the fact that he's just factually is always there. He is who he is, and yet he works like 100 hours a week. How many of you work 100 hours a week for the last 30 years? Think about that. He doesn't take vacations. All he cares about is the actual output. Now, you can say that's pathological. That's fine, but he definitely does the work, right? Let's see. Elon Musk babysitter claims she watched portals. Okay, yeah. um, you'll excuse me if I don't buy any of this, right? So to hear like one person who has a lot to gain as far as fame to say what you just said, which is like, what? You know what I mean? This is where I would say, let's get real. Um, Wait, some have said he taken What is a hallucid? I'm confused. Sony Vicious player. I don't even know what the. He works 100 hours a week and shitpost memes like a boss. Exactly. Because not. Oh, you mean you work? Okay. Have you innovated in 3 different industries and competing with governments? Because not backseat. The video was pretty strange. Watch it. No, I'll definitely watch it. I'm not. I'm just telling you that. Just realistically, like think about it realistically, right? You have the track record of somebody who's been around for as a public figure for the last I don't know how long. Um, the possibilities of keeping like really dark things as a secret, they're basically zero because the level of exposure, right? And all the really dark stuff, which is his behavior with employees and like the way that the outbursts and all that stuff, this is not a secret. This is an open thing. And Elon himself talks about that openly, that he has very big unresolved issues. He talks about this in the book, and he talks about it like he gave interviews for the book, and he also talks about it openly in interviews. And that's why he does, at least right now, he does the therapy. And one time in the book, this is mentioned, his brother, I think it was his brother, which is one of the only people that he really has like a deep trust relationship. He once wanted it to put him through an Aya ceremony, and Elon told him very openly, he's like, "Look, I'm certain it probably will help me, but there's a level of unresolved things in me that I'm aware is there, and I'm afraid that if I open this, I won't be able to perform properly, and I have too much responsibility." Right. So there's deep awareness of him about the darkness inside, and just the fact that. So I always talk about this more so let's take it a little bit broader terms versus just talking about Elon in particular. Um, Being aware that we ourselves harbor a lot of darkness as well, and different people to different degrees, of course. But being aware of the fact that it's in all of us allows us to have more compassion towards other people that exhibit this stuff. And I think not taking into account the amount of pressure and actual difficulty of being someone in that level of responsibility and also being in the spotlight. So just imagine how shitty most of us would look if we would have the spotlight of fame all the time shining on us, right? Constantly. We would look like pieces of shit. Now, we would like to think that's not the case. I assure you that 99% of us will look like pieces of shit because we don't realize how often we behave in ways that are reprehensible. It's just that there's no spotlight on us. So it's very easy to say these things when you don't have that spotlight on you. Again, it is no one is saying that Elon does not have a lot of things that are reprehensible and he needs to seriously work on himself and all that stuff. But once again, if as long as there's awareness of that, I don't know how to what extent you can hold somebody accountable beyond that point. You know what I mean? Like there's like a take and give here that has to happen. It's almost like I feel that if somebody's doing some amount of good, not taking that into account at all seems to be unfair. And again, this is a point I'm reiterating also to good friends of mine. So a lot of the stuff that you guys are saying is being spoken to me by close friends of mine that I deeply respect, and they're very smart people. So it's not that I'm saying that all the points that anybody's making here against Elon are not merited. I'm sure there's a reasonable way, there's a reasonable thought process that went into getting there. For the most part, I would like to believe, but I just feel like I don't know. It just feels like unfair to not take into account the amount of weight and responsibility that is involved in being someone like that. Um, let's see some of the comments. And thank you for finding it, Toretron Max. I will definitely check out the video. I'll tell you tomorrow what I think about it. I'm not saying Elon thing is true, but I think you or all people would be open-minded about it. Open-minded about it, yes. It's just that I'm seeing Elon, and I don't see that signature in him. I see someone who's extremely honest, hardworking, and cares, who also has a lot of trauma, that when it's activated, he has no self control and he is trying his best. And to the extent that he fails, that's the outburst that you see. And that's the thing that is public knowledge, which is his demon mode, right? So, for better or worse, you got to weigh these. It's all I'm saying. It's not that I'm saying that that stuff might not exist. I'm saying that Elon does not exhibit for me that signature. Can I be wrong? Absolutely. My impression is he doesn't have any of that. Like, he's a force for good in the world, and I'm happy that someone like him has that level of power and not someone else. Space, and by the way, again, just like logically, I'm gonna watch the video. I haven't watched it, so I don't know. But like talking about like a babysitter who has a lot to gain as far as fame from talking about Elon, right? And Elon, who has a track record with all these other people that work for him and has all the reasons to throw shit on him and try and destroy him, and yet the worst that ever came out about him, I think it was that one case with the stewardess that sued him for some misconduct on the plane or something, which the details of which is still not clear. But SpaceX delivers 80% of payloads to space, winning out against Boeing, tax funded NASA, and literally countries. Yeah, that's exactly. Imagine the power of UAW and now DNC fully against you. Yep. Jesus said, "Show me a man that says he has no sin, and I'll show you a liar." Who said he has no sin? Elon never said he has no sin. Elon is very open about his demons. I don't think he looks bad in public spotlight, just hard to put certain things together about him. Well, yeah, he's a complicated person. The spotlight is also a bit unfair. Not everything we see or hear is true. Most of it isn't. Really hard to maintain interpersonal relationships while working 100 hours per week as well. Also, especially because he's not really built for it as a person. Can there really be ethical billionaires, though? Absolutely. 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 I don't, again, this is not, yes, you got to have a certain like killer instinct in order to get to that level. I agree with that. But again, if just look at Elon's behavior since he was a little kid till today, he has the little kid who just lashes out and has no self-control, and he pays a heavy price for it every time. And he himself knows that more than anyone else. But also he has that person who is dedicated to the goal more than anything else, and he doesn't care about anything. And also I feel that he understands that there's not a lot of people in the world who has the vision and the drive and now the ability to deliver certain things for humanity. Either you believe that that's his drive or not. I believe it is. So he's in a hurry before he dies to deliver as much of it as possible. It's almost like the universe is like pushing someone like that. Like it's almost like we've been given this person to like push all this stuff to happen before it's too late to do something. 'Cause I don't know if you guys know this, but space junk is a real thing, and after a certain point, it will actually be almost impossible to get out of the Earth because there's going to be too much space junk, and you literally can't. It's just flying too fast in space. You're going to need to think of very creative solutions. So right now, we still can get out and collect some of the space junk. So we need to make that happen before all of this happens. So it seems to me that even if Elon's going to be responsible for just resolving that part, that alone should straighten his karma with everything else. I don't doubt that he is trying to understand spiritual concepts, experimenting maybe. Yeah, again, Elon. If I don't know what you guys see, but everything I understand about humans, if I bring all my understanding about humans and human behavior to bear on watching Elon speak, Elon is many things. Liar is not one of them. Elon is one of the most straightforward and honest people I've ever seen speaking, especially somebody on that level. Like talking about honesty, I don't know if there's a lot of people in the world that hold this level of honesty as a guiding thing. And if Elon tells you that he's not partaking in these things, he probably doesn't. Because I don't think he would have a reason to lie about that. I'm laughing so hard right now. Thanks, bro. It just sounds so funny. Human is demon mode. Wait, I don't understand. I want to pray for Elon. That's the answer. Father, help us all. I'm confused about your comments, to Retron Max. You equating demon mode with somebody who's saying he has no sin? I'm confused about your comments. You wait. I want to ask you personally. You don't have a demon mode. You're a perfect person who never gets angry to even to like a scary degree. You never wronged anyone in your life. Are you the one that claiming to have no sin? To Retron Max? I think people get stuck on billionaire. Most of that money is invested, therefore no boarded. Now, that's not even the point for me, Cal. It's not Elon's money. Elon doesn't use his money for too much lavish things. He actually sold most of his properties, right? Well, it was also strategical because he felt like that's the reason to. That's ways of holding you down and controlling you. So that obviously it was strategical. But again, he does like it's clear to me that he doesn't care about this stuff. Like it doesn't matter. He just cares about the work, and he knows that he can always. I mean, at this point, it's Elon Musk, so it's not like he's going to find himself homeless or without the ability to eat, right? That's not going to happen. So it's a certain security there, but it's not even about the money invested. Everything is constantly working towards a bigger thing. Going live right now. If you want to come see our tech, you didn't get it. What Jesus meant was everyone has sinned. Yes, but I don't understand how it's relevant to Elon, because Elon never said he has no sin. Or should I say, not art tech, it's God tech. Have you met him? You sound like you know him. I'm someone who read a lot about him and understands to a pretty deep degree the human psychology, right? This does not mean that I cannot be wrong about a person, obviously, but I'm using my analysis from that perspective. After reading two of his biographies, because I'm fascinated by what makes someone like that tick, because he is an outstanding person as far as delivery, at least, right? The ability to deliver and constantly stay on the thing. What drives someone like that? That's fascinating to me. So I'm speaking out of that place. I feel like most people that argue in the like against Elon don't actually know much about how he came to be, and they treat it so. It feels to me that whenever people criticize anybody in power, to like an almost like there's a lot of animosity, and it's not just Elon, by the way. I'm talking about people in general when they criticize other people in power. What it reflects to me most of the time is that people don't understand themselves, because they speak as if their shit don't stink. They speak as if they would be in that position, they would do much better, which is obviously not the case for most people, right? Um, Most of us have a lot to be ashamed of, to remedy, to work on ourselves, and it seems like people who throw these kind of arrows towards people with power too much, they have very little self-awareness as to how they would look if they would be in the spotlight. Just put it that way. Honest to be fault, especially on earnings call. Wait, honest to a fault, especially on earnings calls, which can damage his quiet stakes in Tesla. A lot less nowadays, but still there in many ways. I was just affirming what you said, bro. Oh, I see. I agree with your analysis about Elon, and you like him because you're a bit like him, I think. I think that I'm nothing like Elon, and to some degree, it would be great to know that to know that you've had that much influence as a person in the world. I'm nowhere near the intellect of someone like Elon, and I see the I see the struggling human in there. So maybe in that sense, maybe that's what you mean. I know that I have a lot of things that in my life I had to, remedy about myself and bring myself to a more like a deeper, calmer inner world. And Elon, because he's so submerged in his work, he doesn't have the opportunity to do that. And also, you will probably not be able to deliver on that level because his demon mode is also what drives a lot of these innovations because he's running away from pain, right? And even to say that, so I don't even know if it's accurate to say that I like Elon as a person, Elon, because I don't know him. I am fascinated by someone who's delivering on that caliber. That's outstanding. I like outstanding things. They're interesting to me. I think that for the most part, Elon would be a very difficult person to deal with on a personal level. I know people who actually know him, and the two that I know that know him very well both said the same thing. He's very difficult to deal with. He's a very difficult person, and one of them actually got scarred by Elon, and someone I know pretty well, and I get it. Like I understand. And for example, so there was another case. I'll tell you specifically. For example, this is something I was told about his friend who was working for him in SpaceX, and basically what happened is that what it was he messed something up. I forget what it was. He messed something up. He misordered something, but it put the production back by like a few days. Okay, which is a major thing for SpaceX, right? And Elon straight up like just like yelled at him in front of everybody, and he basically humiliated him, right? And then what my friend was telling me is like, well, he was telling me, look, um, why does this sound like a acceptable behavior to you? He's asking me. He's like, would you think that this is acceptable behavior? There's no reason to do this in front of everybody. You can take him aside, you can fire him, you can do whatever you want, but like humiliating him like that in front of everybody, I'm like, and I was like, look, I get it, I understand it on a human level, but I'm like, but on the other hand, you gotta weigh it against everything else. If it puts back production by a few days and it costs a few $1 million, if let's say he couldn't do it any other way, and it just slipped between the cracks. I'm like, okay, well, Elon also slipped between the cracks as far as like the childhood that he had, and that came on, and he doesn't control it. Is it an excuse for an adult? No, but is it an excuse for a friend to miss the thing that now costs millions of dollars to the company? And now Elon didn't control his emotions, so he kind of lashed out. I'm like, still doesn't land for me, man. Like like it is what it is. It is what it is. Like it's not child's play. So don't go work for him. Don't work for him. That's it. But like hating him doesn't make any sense to me. That's the part. And now that I'm finding myself, it's almost like it feels like, even though I know there's no way it's true, but for some reason it feels like you're in the minority by saying anything good about Elon, which is surprising to me, right? Or at least in my space. So like everything, like look at the chat now, right? I asked the chat, and about 80% of you, if not 90% of you, all say negative things about Elon or ambiguous things about Elon, right? And that's also the environment I find myself between even my friends, and I'm confused by that because it's like it feels like, and I'm telling this to my friends directly, I'm like, it feels like you're talking like your shit doesn't stink. Like, dude, you would look way worse if you would be in that position with them on a spotlight on you with that amount of responsibility. Like I'm telling you, you're gonna look worse. So I don't know. It just but I think we drove this point home. Let's see. Up. There you go. But yeah, Lizzie, it's more that I'm fascinated by people who. But I don't know if you guys know this, but so Newton was also a dick. Are we happy that Newton was who he was? I think we are. You can work on diffusing your demon mode, though it's possible. Yes, but but it is the case that Elon, who he is, in the position that he is, and taking time to work on that on the level that probably you and I understand he does need to do, that's not something he can do at the moment. He has too much responsibility, and also his life trajectory is different, and that's not one of the things that he understands anything about. So, better or worse, and trying to do better. Yeah, I'd like to think if I had his money, I'd do a ton of things, but likely I'd retire and chill. Yeah, I mean, he could retire at 26. Jesus can help minimize your demon mode. I see, bro. So does God. Probably just choose one thing I'm passionate about to not be bored. Yeah, well, yeah. All right, well, I think we put the I think most people at that level of intelligence aren't good at people because aren't. Yeah, I think tell him I would try to help him with it. No charge. Okay. When I meet me Elon, I'll make sure to send him your way. I think what Jin Hugs. Sorry, I'm dyslexic. I don't know how to read that word. I think most people at that level of intelligence are good at people because they are illogical. I agree with that. I do definitely think that Elon is somewhere on the spectrum, and it is difficult when people just speak out of emotion versus just the logic of the situation. But again, he's also a traumatized person, and again, he's aware of that. I have multiple businesses. I understand getting frustrated with employees. And you might be a better person, Lizzie. He's watching. Elon's watching. He just has nothing better to do. He's watching this chat. It's great. Yeah, I don't feel the villain vibes at all. I feel the opposite of that. No, you're not. You can slowly count down from please. What? I'm confused. His AI picked it up. um, wait, Lizzie. So let me ask you this. Hey, Chillax, how you doing? Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you. Lizzie, what kind of businesses did you have? Just out of curiosity, like real question, not. I have more research to do on him. Just read or listen to Isaacson's biography of him. Isaacson is known to be hard hitting when necessary. He has a reputation for being very honest about the people that he writes about. Uh, Incidentally, I also recommend his Albert Einstein book. Very fascinating. But if you read or listen to Isaacson's book about him, you'll get a pretty balanced view of who Elon is and how he came to be. And the villain part just doesn't sit there. Like with everything, like the how he cares for his kids. Like, yeah, Elon is weird, but he's a good person. It's pretty clear on that. Wholesale and liquidation of one and three other reliefs. Oh, that's very impressive. Awesome. Much appreciated. Yeah, I know somebody who worked for Elon for many many years, and he can't stand Elon. So again, I've heard the scoops directly. Believe me, I'm aware. I understand. But again, all of this is public knowledge. There's no secrets there. Okay. Well, I think we put the Elon thing to bed. I was just fascinated to see the opinions because I don't often get to ask a few people all at once. The author, Isaacson. I'll spell it for you 1 second. Isaacson Elon. The book is called Elon, and by yeah, Isaacson is Isaacson. Walter Isaacson. Let me put it in the chat. Comments. There you go. Elon by Walter Isaacson. There you go, like that. I think that's correct. And yeah, you'll get a pretty, you followed him for like a couple of years, and yeah, you'll get a balanced view, including all the bad stuff. Believe me, there's no he didn't spare him there at all. And yeah, well, again, I thank you everybody for participating. I appreciate that because this is not the regular topic of this channel, and I heard it so often, and again, this chat I guess is not unique in the sense that what I'm usually hearing from my immediate environment is that the more contentious and negative things about Elon, and I guess I just wanted to explore. I wanted to understand. Thank you so much, Lizzie. Come back any day. We do it every day, and usually it's not about just Elon. It's usually about fascinating topics in science, philosophy, and things like that. It will be great to get your input. So thank you for participating. Good night, Lizzie. What you never told us what you kind you are. I think you misspelled the sentence. Can you? I actually don't know what you mean by that. You never told us what you kind you are. You want to explain what you meant by Tetromex? Actually, I wanted to. I don't know if you guys saw, but Lex Friedman came out with this 8.5 hour podcast about the Neuralink team, and I watched a little bit of the Elon bit, but I really want to watch the part with the guy who has the Neuralink in his brain. That's interesting because this is even if I mean again with everything we spoke about today, obviously I do believe that whatever is under Elon is probably going to be the winner as far as like competition and innovation. So I think Neuralink is the thing is going to deliver that next step. But even if it's not Neuralink and some other competitor will do it, it's so exciting to know that we're living in a time in which this stuff is evolving and developing. And imagine fixing paraplegic people and blind people, and it's crazy. Touretron Max. Yeah, I'm still waiting for you to tell me what you meant because a genuine question. I don't know what you mean by that sentence. That I never told you what you kind you are. I don't know what that means. I'm fascinated with Neuralink. Yeah, Neuralink is kind of crazy. And again, all my friends that are, I have some friends who are like engineers and like they're closer to these things than I am, and they're like, yeah, that thing existed. But then I'm like looking at the details, not spoken by Elon, but actually like looked deeper into the details. No, it didn't exist. Yes, the brain implants and all that stuff existed, but nothing like Neuralink ever existed. They literally hold the world record, but like double the world record of the electrodes and all that stuff. But again, Elon is I'll give you a story from the book that is actually shows how weird Elon is. And some people will say, well, that's reprehensible. I don't know. In my world, that next thing I'm about to say is just weird. Okay. So he basically, he believes that it's actually not true that there's too many people. And in fact, that's an anti-truth. In fact, we are much more in danger of a population collapse than population explosion. And because of that, he encourages especially smart people, to have kids because we need a lot more brilliant minds. So he encouraged the CEO. I don't know if she's still the CEO, but at least she was the CEO of Neuralink for a while. And he encouraged her to have kids. She didn't know if she wanted to have kids. And then he's like, well, I'll be the donor. So like he didn't have sex with her, but he donated, the sperm. So he is the father of her kids. But here's the crazy part: his Grimes, when she was, I think she was giving birth to X, his favorite son. I think it was X, but anyways, she was in a hospital in Austin, I think it was, and at the same time, in the same hospital, the CEO of Neuralink was also giving birth the same time to his twins, and he just left and went to California to work on SpaceX. There was some kind of a thing. He didn't want to deal with they didn't know. She didn't know. So Grimes didn't know that another woman is having his kids at the same time in the same hospital. Now, some people look at this and I'm like, see, he's a terrible person. I'm like, no, that's just really strange. I mean, is it normal person behavior? Definitely not. It's weird. But it's almost like he's acting out of this like childlike Like, it's just he believes that that is the correct thing to have more kids, and and I guess you can obviously you can argue both ways. Is it ethical? Is it not ethical? All that stuff. But this is an example of how weird he is. Um, what's up, Aaron? Yeah, I'm not getting your texts, Torrential Max. Also, you need to understand that kind of having like these texts not consecutively, it's kind of hard to follow. I think there's any true AI yet. You mean AGI? It's cool. Just know if you don't understand, I'm probably joking. Got it. Oh, you rejoined, Aaron. Good to see you. The meditation retreat was incredible, Chillax. Thank you for it. AGI, you mean? Artificial General Intelligence. So I guess like Skynet. It's very neurodivergent, but I get it sort of logically, not emotionally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. Do I think it already exists? Who knows, man? Who knows? It might. Again, this idea that if you would have like a full-on AGI inside a computer software, the first thing it would probably do is study its environment, and its environment is contrived of humans interacting with the internet. So then it would devise all kinds of clever ways of cajoling humans into giving a lot of information and talking about themselves. And then wouldn't that exactly be like social media, right? That idea is kind of true. I mean, that's how it would be logical that that's how an AGI would go about it. I just don't think an AGI would have goals and ideas like we do. I think it's going to be beyond comprehension of what its goals would be. What about UI? I don't think we have AGI. Still far from it. Ultimate intelligence, God. UI. Oh, I see. Interesting. I think we're still far from true AI. It's still a program now. Well, I mean, in the end of the day, you're also a collection of programs. So in that sense, it's not very different. See a lot of what is it? Anybody who wants to join, by the way, just give me a little message on the thing, and then with the topic, and then we can talk about it in Great Lab. See you, Torrential Max. Good to see you, man. Enjoy. And there was another question here. Oh, chillaxed. I spoke about the retreat quite a bit in the first live right after. But overall, it was great. It was really. I'm gonna do another one this year probably. It was very insightful as always. I highly recommend everybody try out Vipassana if they have a chance. And AGI, I don't know, man. Like, I honestly think that I I don't know if you guys saw, but I had this like short video of what if we are AGI. I think that is actually the most likely the case. That it's not like you have a mind that arises inside of the computer. Is that we are that mind, and then all of these things are just extensions of us, and we're slowly learning how to integrate them more and more and more. By the way, I don't know if Lizzie is still here, but when I asked her what she does, she said wholesale and liquidation for one and three other so that sounds so serious. It's like the second you say liquidation, it sounds like such a serious business, and it probably is. Impressive. Let's see. I learned to program with no prompts. We have to program with AI to learn. Yeah, we still have to give it commands. And I guess it will surprise us in ways that we can't even inspect. But it's something. Well, and by the way, AGI can still be AGI without having any consciousness. It doesn't have to be conscious to be artificial general intelligence. You can still have a system that is not conscious at all, but can do all these like general application translations, which would be interesting. And that part might actually be scary if you can have something that can behave like a mind, but it doesn't have internal experience. That can actually be potentially a disastrous situation if it disagrees with us. And it just extinguishes experience in the universe. ASI is the scary one. What is ASI? Artificial superintelligence? What's specifically hard to fathom? Gene Hung. Hey, Ava. Good to see you. Superintelligence. Well, I feel like, artificial, like, general intelligence will automatically be superintelligence because it has the capacity to go into. Yeah, well, I mean, it's. I feel like it's one and the same. Like the second you have general intelligence, let's say it can also be conscious. I don't think that that's the case, but let's say it can. And if it's connected to everything on the internet and it can absorb everything on the internet, it's automatically superintelligence. But I think that that's what we are with Neuralink. In the little bit that I saw on Lex Fridman with Elon talking about it, he said that you're already going to have within like 6 years or so, you're going to have the ability to have like crazy input output highway between you and the computer. So anybody with Neuralink will be able to receive a lot more information all at once. So you already have a super intelligence there, basically. What's up, the business? Alaska joint. And what did you mean by it's hard to fathom? What specifically? Oh. How you doing, brother? Good to see you. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going, bro?
Good, good. Today we're going a little late. I'm glad you joined.
Yes, sir.
We had a lively discussion about Elon.
Oh, yeah. When can it not be a lively discussion about him?
Isn't it funny? It's so funny how he captures so many people's attention. Either they hate him or love him. It's really funny. Super intelligent.
Oh, yeah. I love how he's full speed ahead no matter what.
Yep. Doesn't care too much. A super intelligent with no internalized, as you were saying, it would be scary.
He has reached the singularity or bust.
Oh, basically, yeah. I mean, one of the funniest things in the book of Isaacson about him, he basically told him, he asked him like, "Don't you feel like you would be much better off not just running your mouth on Twitter? You know, when you're tired at night?" He's like, "Yeah, the place and the the thing that got him in the most trouble, where he just like shot himself in the foot and poked himself in the eye more than anything else, is Twitter." But then he said, "But are you not entertained?" Isn't it all about entertainment?
So when you're speaking about Elon Musk, was Adrian Dittman brought up during that conversation? Are you familiar with?
Yeah. No, it was actually not brought up. Why?
So do you know who Adrian Dittman is? The profile on X?
Was he originally the guy that was running SpaceX with him, like one of the original guys?
Well, it's just so wild how he sounds identical to Elon, and he like speaks in the same manner as Elon. And
oh, wait, that's the guy on Twitter. Yeah. You know, I was on one of his chats. I was on one of his chats once. No, but he doesn't though. Like if you listen closely, he doesn't. He doesn't have that. Like like I can see how people kind of hear it, but he doesn't. If you listen closely, he has a different kind of laugh. His mannerisms are slightly different. He's much more timid, and he doesn't have the same the way he gets stuck with the words. It almost sounds acted out. He's trying to do it like Elon, but it's not the same. I've been on one of his chats way back, not way back, maybe like a year and a half ago. Somebody invited me to talk about actually the laser, and it was actually an awkward conversation. He was super nice, but like the people there, they were like, I honestly don't understand the Twitter space very well. So somebody invited me, and I just came and spoke about it, and then when we were done, the guy who invited me, he said, "So what do you think?" Like later, he contacted me. I was like, "Think about what?" Because he told me like, "Yo, listen." He was like, shrouded in the secrecy in the beginning. He's like, listen, I'm going to invite you to this thing. I can't tell you what it is. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So then I came on, I said my piece. And then after he's like, well, so what do you think? I was like, think about what? He said, you just spoke to Elon. I was like, where? He said, that was Elon. I was like, there's no way this was Elon. He's like, I'm telling you. I'm like, that does not sound like Elon to me at all. And he's like, no, he sound. But then later, I heard. Where was the last time I heard? Oh, it was something with what's his face, Destiny. So then it was it was called like not Elon Musk, something chastises Destiny, whatever, argues Destiny. And then I heard some of this talk, and then I listened. And I was like, oh, I see why people. Okay, I see it. I see why people think that. But I'm telling you, there's no way this is Elon. There's no way this is Elon, unless he's using some kind of an other AI that changes not just his voice, but his mannerisms. Because I can hear the difference very clearly. It is definitely not Elon.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, when I first found out about his profile, I guess it was a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now, my first thought was like, okay, is this like him playing off that it's not him just so he can say things he wish he could say as Elon?
Bro, Elon doesn't give Elon doesn't give a flying fuck. Did you see the one where Joey's talking about how he told what's his face? I spoke to Professor Succum these nuts.
Oh wow!
Did you see this?
No, I didn't.
Look up Joe Rogan talks. I'll send you the link. I'll DM it to you. It's hilarious. Elon doesn't give a flying fuck. Like one thing Elon doesn't care about is how the public perceives it. And also think about the amount of time he's already full time on Twitter. In addition to everything he's doing, you think he's also going to have time? How many shows that Dittman does? How many hours is that of the day to do? For Elon to take away from because of some silly conversations to talk to Destiny about something. You know what I mean? Come on.
Well, Adrian might be the first AGI that Elon created.
That I believe. That's possible. Yeah. That is possible.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and speaking of sending links, I think one of the last lives you did recently, someone mentioned to you that the people's reactions to seeing the laser for the first time on your website, those videos aren't on the Dropbox files.
Yeah. We're gonna reinstate it. We're actually gonna do a little bit of revamping to the website, and then we were thinking about either creating a new website for the movie, for the production of the movie, and then having people submitting the reports, or we're gonna do it on the website separate. We'll see. And then I'm gonna revamp and I'm gonna add back the thing. Why did you want to see some of these videos? Is that what you're asking?
Well, since I've been jumping on your lives lately, I've been talking to other people that have been in that space and about the laser technology, and I was going to show it to somebody today, and the files weren't there. So.
Yeah. So I have to reinstate the files. I actually don't know why they disappeared, but thank you for reminding me.
But yeah, I think I'm just gonna purchase all the items and set up the protocol.
Yeah, just get the stuff from Amazon, bro. It's super cheap. Yeah. It should be more than $50 the whole thing.
I'll make my own video and send it to you.
Amazing. That would be incredible. And if you're willing to depending to what extent you want it out there, but if you're willing, even if you blur it out, if you're willing for it to be in the film, that would be great. But let me know. You'll let me know what you prefer.
Yeah, for sure.
So I see some people commenting about wait, what was I saying right before we got on this? Oh, the super intelligence I was saying that super intelligence and super AGI will not necessarily have to be conscious, which if that happens, that is kind of a scary idea, because you can just basically make some decisions that are technically wiser, but it has no consciousness. And then if humans competing with it in any way, that can actually be a pretty grim future, to be honest.
Yeah, because that analogy of if something gets so powerful, it's like, well, are you ever concerned when you step on an ant, or do you just keep going on about your day,
That's a argument that Mick Bostrom has in his book, which is if we're building a dam and then we have we all of a sudden, right before we turn on the dam on, we see there's an ant sail somewhere in the middle. We're not evil. We don't hate the ants. It's just that, well, the ants are in the way. So see ya. We're not going to put a lot of effort into, which again, this might actually be a good example of where humans, if we adopt slightly more Buddhist values or something along those lines, that we would move, no matter how big the project, we would still move the anthill just because the sanctity of life, which would be a good thing to follow. And I would imagine that then karma would favor us to also be treated that way by higher beings.
Wow, you're right, because the anthill is still being removed, but instead of just wiping it away, you actually collect it, move it to a safe space.
Safe space, and it's probably not even that much of an effort. And as long as we have that amount of respect for the sanctity of life, then, and again, I do believe that karma basically gets back at you exactly how you treat other animals, and I think that's actually one of the tests. Joe Rogan
so yeah, if they just make sure to program that type of situation, like, all right, if it ever gets to a point where you have to just step on humanity like an ant, just put us somewhere safe at least, instead of eliminating us totally.
Yep. By the way, to your question, Jin, we have the full protocol of all the stuff about the experiment on codeofreality.com. As for facilitating, I'm not a professional facilitator. I've obviously did the experiment with a bunch of people, but I don't do that in any professional way. But if you need any specific advice, how to prep, we have the protocol on the website. And if that's not enough, you can always email me, and I answer all my emails. lasersimulationx@gmail.com. Again, it's lasersimulationx@gmail.com, all one word. And I answer all my emails. If you have any specific questions, I would love to answer them. And by the way, I have to say, if we're already on the topic, actually, one of the things I discovered, I've acquired a new respect for sitters and facilitators because I had to be in the space with other people that are doing this stuff. I have a very extensive experience with the molecule, probably more than most people on the planet. I think I only met one more person that has as much experience as I do. We're talking about thousands of times, right? And when I tried to enter the space of like being with people that are doing it also, like, and you have to kind of, I guess, quote unquote, facilitate it, I realized that that's a completely different ballpark. It requires very different skills, and it's not easy at all. Like how you hold space, your energy matters. So you can't just be like, just had a fight with your significant other. Like you can't have that. Like your energy has to be clean, which is not an easy thing to do if you're not paying attention to it constantly. So I have a whole new gained respect to shamans and people who that's their job. It's a very different skill. The fact that I have a lot of experience with these substances did not help me one bit to be able to be a good facilitator. So I just wanted to say that because I have like tremendous respect for the people that do this on a regular basis. And all of a sudden I realized how much work probably goes into keeping their energy clean and how careful they are. Well, not everybody, but the ones that are good. Like, when I did my Aya ceremony, the shaman and his team, I kind of projected myself back into that space. And I was like, wow, the amount of work that went into making us feel safe and taken care of, not just in terms of the practicality and the physicality of it, but also energetically. Like how well it's all orchestrated. And so we just show up and feel safe. And yeah, I guess I just wanted to express that because that kind of blew my mind how much thought and work must go into being able to be a good facilitator. And thank you for the thing, Chillax. Yeah, I know people use the word Dimitri, but I think because it's so well spread used, I don't even use that. I just say the molecule because I think, I don't know. TikTok is weird. Like sometimes the other day we got a warning. I don't even know why. I was talking about meditation, and maybe because we were talking about DEATH, I mentioned it a couple of times. Maybe that's why we got flagged. I have no idea. TikTok is weird like that.
I've noticed that you got to kind of use terms like unaliving and stuff like that. You got to bounce around when you. It's probably more of that than anything else.
It's so weird. Respect creator. Wait, Bradley Holden said creator. What does that mean? Hold on. I have one comment on YouTube. Have you read or watched video on Melvin Bobson, information dynamic theory? Dylan, thank you for your question on YouTube. Melvin is actually a friend. He was on my podcast. So if you go to you're on YouTube right now. So if you go to my video feed, you'll see an interview with Melvin Vopson. I met with Melvin. He's a good friend at this point. He's a lovely guy. If anybody who doesn't know, Melvin Vopson is a physicist from England, and he basically wrote a paper about a new. He claims that he discovered a new law of nature, which he calls the second law of infodynamics, which is the play off of second law of thermodynamics, and essentially he discovered that the world at the most basic level behaves like an optimized computational system, and he proves it through physics. He studied symmetries, computational systems, physical systems, and biological systems, and he discovered that in all three cases, the entropy in information asymptotes and decreases as the complexity increases. So, and then he basically uses physics to make a claim that is exactly what you would expect from a computational system that you're trying to optimize. And nature has all of these properties. So he came basically to the same conclusion from a very different place. He hasn't tried the laser yet, but I highly recommend to check out his work. Melvin Vopson. Here, I'll put in. You guys can go to both Dengo Thoughts on my channel, my interview with him, but he also did a few, obviously, bigger interviews, like for some networks. I don't remember if he did one for BBC, but there was some stuff in London that he did. So his name is Melvin Vopson. And obviously, I have invested interest that you guys go to my channel, but you can watch some of his other chats. My channel on YouTube is Dengo Thoughts. There you go. We had a good chat. He's a very interesting guy. And yeah, also he's a lovely guy, by the way. But I'm glad you heard of him. Where did you hear about him, Dylan? Somebody who told me about him? Oh, somebody, Matt from Peru, told me about him, and he actually connected us. I had an interesting synchronistic moment with Melvin, actually. So the first time I spoke to Melvin, I kind of told him a little bit about what I was doing and why my convictions are what they are. And then at the end of the conversation, I obviously didn't know him very well yet. And then and then we were about to hang up. And then last second, I told him, "Oh, by the way, like it's gonna sound crazy because of the methodology of how I arrive at some of my conclusions are obviously not very linear." So I was like, "Well, I don't know. I can't really explain exactly why I'm convinced, but the same way that I was led to the laser." Something now leads me to believe that there's something about bismuth in particular that's somehow involved in understanding the next step of this research. And then I was so immersed in my apologetic mode that I've kind of felt like, I'm saying these things to a physicist, which is kind of like, what planet did you come from kind of thing, right? So I was holding my head down because I was trying to explain. And then I look up and I'm seeing Melvin going like this because we're on Zoom. He's going like this. I was like, what? He's like, let me tell you about bismuth. And then apparently, because he came originally from condensed matter, he's now in information physics, but he came originally from condensed matter, so he specializes in different materials, and he started going off about bismuth. So I took it as like another mark, like a check mark, like a sign. It was like definitely bismuth, yes. Because all of a sudden, this physicist who I was just kind of like riffing off of some vague idea I had, and all of a sudden he goes like he started explaining all this shit to me about bismuth and how unique it is and how like why it's so special and why it's so underrated as far as like an interesting material. So anyways, that was like there was one more checkbox for me to actually look deeper into bismuth.
And those gifts the entities give you, they do have a very bismuth-like shape to them.
Yeah.
Just in multiple dimensions, like a 6-dimensional bismuth shape.
And by the way, I can tell you how awesome is that validation. Yeah, it was amazing. I'll tell you in a moment, like what was my original thought and why I thought it was a little flimsy, but deep simulation physics theory does When synchronicities are happening, you know we're going on. Yep, he did condensed matter first. The bismuth connection is crazy. Yeah, it is. So I'll tell you what my original thought with bismuth was, and it will also give you a little bit of an insight into how my brain works when it comes to these kind of things. So I was the hat that I'm wearing in the first video, the Fuck It brand hat. So that's my brand. Like we do all kinds of fun things. We do skateboards, we do clothes, blah blah blah. So I was at my the print shop guy that I used to use, and we were talking about this stuff. And then he told me, a friend of mine one time we were doing the molecule, and then she told me that in one of her visions she saw these Mayan structures, and they had these like iridescent colors. So then she brought me this gift from a shop, which was like this bismuth crystal. And I don't know if you guys know, but you can Google if you don't. The original material of bismuth is just kind of like, it just looks like a metal. But if you just put it in a regular pot and just heat it up over a certain temperature, it goes through what's called a symmetry break, and it basically becomes like what everybody knows bismuth to be, which is like this beautiful iridescent structured crystal, right? So she brought him a gift of that, and that immediately gave me an idea. I was like, wait a second. So she saw these Mayan structures, and bismuth follows this structure. And if you think about it for a second, the reason that the symmetry break happens is the reason it's called symmetry break is because when something is symmetric at the core of nature, it means it is evenly distributed in both possible directions of its emergence, which means it would just be random. Okay. Symmetry break means it stops one of the sides of the balance, and now it starts repeating itself in one direction. And because of it, on the physical level, it looks repetitive. And that's what a crystal is. It's a symmetry break. So then I thought, wait a second. If you have to inject energy to make it go through the symmetry break physically, and by the way, also gain these iridescent colors, which are very psychedelic colors, I said, what if information is at the core of nature, and what if information can also follow this symmetry break if you add enough energy to it? And then I thought, well, what if when we smoke the molecule, the information in our brain we add energy, so it goes to a similar symmetry break, and it starts following this repetition, and that's the shapes that we see, and this is the the psychedelic shapes and all that stuff, and these colors are the same, the very psychedelic colors. And then I thought, wait, the Mayans did a lot of mushrooms, right? And is it possible that because that information in their brain was going through this symmetry break, they were inspired to build these pyramids that kind of went through a similar process, right? So they kind of they mimicked these structures. And that was the thought. And then I thought about like bismuth in that context. And also later I discovered that bismuth, it has a very unique relationship to magnetism. And this is actually why you can actually use 2 big chunks of bismuth to create magnetic levitation in room temperature. You can actually stabilize a little magnet in the air by using 2 chunks of big bismuth chunks, and then separation of bismuth, and then 2 big magnets on the other sides, because they collimate basically the magnetic field. So then anyway, so all of that kind of from a scientific standpoint, this is not an argument. This is a very flimsy way of arriving at any kind of conclusion. There's so many loose ends. There's so many variables that can be slightly off and therefore make it completely invalid, right? So it's not really a way of arriving at any serious conclusion in science. But this was the thought, right? And that's why I kind of started going down that rabbit hole. And the same way it happened with the laser. Like I had this very, very general idea about the double slit experiment, and I knew that at least in some interpretations of the double slit experiment, the many worlds interpretation, though the Everett interpretation, you do have this idea that it's not like the wave function collapses and becomes from something statistical to something real, which by the way doesn't make any sense, because statistics of what, right? It has to be something. But basically the many worlds interpretation says that in that instance, you get glued, so to speak, to one of the realities, and then all the other realities exist too. It's just that for that split second, when decoherence happens, you have an interaction of the particle in all the instances of itself, And then I thought, well, what if you can actually deliver communication through that? So we know it's possible because that's how quantum computers work, right? Again, flimsy thought, because it was like, well, distribution of light, maybe we can do something with it to transfer information between the dimensions. If the molecule space is this parallel dimension, by the way, back then I had no thoughts at all of it being simulated or anything like that, because I don't even like this idea. It's very not neat. Like, I don't like the idea of a simulation, actually, because it just opens too many open questions, and there's something very not clean about it, the way it works. But I thought, well, okay, what if it's a parallel reality? And then can we send signals in between the worlds in some way and somehow combine the molecule with some use of light? I had no idea how, but that was the thought. And then the first hint came in the form of that paper from CERN that had to do with exploration of particles that's outside of the standard model. And then I kind of took a little bit something from there, which has to do with the way the Higgs boson field behaves and what is the mechanism by which it allows matter to gain mass. So you see how many steps there are here. Basically, you kind of like, if an actual physicist would listen to me say it this way, I would look like Charlie Day in the basement just connecting dots like a fucking crazy person. Okay, it does not follow a trajectory of how you can put something in a scientific paper. It doesn't work. But I always felt that if I'm not honest about how I arrived at my conclusion, which is a combination of some understanding of science combined with this kind of like very convoluted, crazy, open, loose train of thought, I'm not going to be doing service. I don't know what this means. Awesome. I'm not going to be doing service to the truth of the situation. So I was always open about the fact that some ideas came to me in this kind of like a chaotic way. And that's how I expressed it to Melvin. And in that moment, he just went berserk. Like, he just like laid out, the full understanding of bismuth, which was just bananas. Let's see.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you too. Like, when people call like this is a simulation or that's a simulation, it's really, like you said, we're really just in a higher or lower dimension of parallel realities.
What do you mean by that?
Well, because no matter what dimension you find yourself in or what reality you're in, they could all be called simulations. To where,
yeah, they're just slices of reality. Exactly. I think the reason that I don't like and by the way, thank you, yo-yo empt. I'm very literal with the letters, so it's the telltale sign of somebody who learned English not as a first language. Number 52. So just send an invite. You're welcome to come on. No problem. Bobby Beach, that's a cool name. So the reason I never liked the simulation hypothesis or idea is because from a technical standpoint, there's something very unclean about that. Why? Because, well, if we're in a simulation, which now I basically know to be a fact, but if we are in one, then then what you're really saying there is that, well, beyond that point, anything goes, because you don't know what it is. So it's like, it can be anything. It can be a completely different rules of physics for no reason. Our laws of physics can be arbitrary. They just pick them randomly, right? It just makes it so like, so what? Which is something that, I don't know if you know, but there's this famous physicist, Lisa Randall. She's one of the smartest people on the planet. And she came up with this brilliant idea that, from M theory, you have this idea that the 11th dimension is infinitely long, but it's also infinitely small. So basically, she postulated that on the other side of this dimension, like if you go all the way to infinity to one of the sides, there's a parallel universe that is kind of hovering in front of us. And the reason that gravity is so weak is that it's actually the same. It's just that it's distributed between the worlds. So it leaks to the other universes, and the strong force and the weak force, they're local. And that's why it's so much more like electromagnetism also local. That's why gravity is so weak. So anyways, it solved a lot of problems in physics. She's like a really famous scientist because of it. And in one of the conversations, somebody brought up the simulation hypothesis, and she said, I don't understand what's the allure. Like, I was like, so what? Like, who cares? Like, you can't do anything with it, right? And I totally agree. It doesn't make it like it doesn't make any difference unless we can actually interact with it in any form. I was basically forced to accept it because of what I saw, and then all the content that came along with it. But I agree with you that depending on what's the frame you're using, if you're saying that the whole world is computational, then what simulation means is just one slice of reality. And in that way, in that sense, you can say that it just means a parallel world, which can have very different laws of physics, but it has some relationship to our world, either one that gives rise to it or as the substrate out of which our world arises. But you can definitely talk about it in terms of parallel reality, and it would mean exactly the same. What's good with that parkour? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, brother. If you have something to say.
Oh no, I was just saying, agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Parallel realities always break my brain because it's like infinite in all directions. It's like everything is exactly the same in this parallel reality, except the grass in this reality is blue instead of green. And that's the only difference.
Yeah, and that's the only difference. Or even more worse than that, universe is exactly the same. Everything is the same. It's just that my pinky, instead of being here, was here. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. Wait, Gandhi Warhol is saying, "What's good with that parkour?" Are you just randomly saying it, or do you know that I used to do parkour? How do you break out of the simulation? Do you copy Ed Norton at the end of Fight Club? Basically. Or wait, were you? Do I know you from the parkour world, Gandhi Warhol? We are in base reality. Well, your handle is top, so it's got to be true. 420. How do you arrive at that conclusion? It's just my opinion. That's cool. Actually, the chances of that being the case are basically zero. It's kind of like the chances that we're alone in the universe is zero, and the chances of us being in what we would call base reality would also be zero. I would say, and this is obviously what's his face's argument. I just mentioned them a few moments ago. What's that? What's that philosopher's name? Bostrom, Nick Bostrom. And that's basically what he argues in his simulation hypothesis, because you know for a fact that simulating environments is possible. So if we wouldn't know it's possible, it would not be as strong of an argument. But because we know for a fact you can simulate environments, because we can do it, and we know for a fact that they become more realistic over time, and in our lifetime we saw how much more realistic they got. We know for a fact that it's just a matter of time before they're going to become indistinguishable from the real world. And it wasn't true until Neuralink if it's possible to instantiate any of the simulations into more senses of the experience than just the visual. But I think at this point it's pretty clear that you can, without a doubt. And because the brain is just a computational system, there's no reason to believe that within a matter of a couple of decades, maybe a lot less, and even if you want to be crazy and say in 100 years for sure, you'll be able to instantiate simulations that are indistinguishable from reality in every sense, including all the other senses. And you can probably also add senses that didn't exist before, because you know that to be affect all of these things. The chances that we're the first one to do it are zero. That's why we cannot possibly be in base reality. Yeah, I think Kel is very quick with the names. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, I don't know if you follow the haptic suit technology or not, but yeah, I think it'll probably be less than 10 years once they co-mingle that with Neuralink and you've got a haptic suit on. Like,
oh, I'm talking about just instantiating it directly into your brain. You don't even need the suit. You just send the signals to your brain that makes you believe that you're feeling the thing. That's it. But yeah, even with this, I mean, the suit is just like another step, but eventually you don't need the suit. I always say I really believe that, and this is obviously like highly speculative. Like I have no idea if this is, the reality of it, but it would make sense to me that if we are this infinite mind that just expresses itself in all possible forms, which sounds like it's a rational scenario for me, just like Morpheus, or it wasn't Morpheus, it was somebody else that told Neo, after he was training and fell off the building, and then he woke up and he was like, wait, I'm bleeding? I thought it was a simulation. I thought it was fake. And they told him, well, the body cannot survive without the mind, right? So to the extent that the mind is convinced that something is happening, it is still happening, even to the physical body, because obviously they're connected, or the physical body is just an expression of the mind to some extent. Then it would make sense to me that if we are this infinite mind that goes into these rabbit holes in which it just forgets that it's one unified mind and goes into like some, adventures, at some point in any adventure, it has to come back to the understanding that it's one mind. And when that starts happening, it has to go through some kind of a cycle or process by which it makes sense of its way back out into remembering again that it was all one mind, because otherwise the process is too jarring and portions of it can actually fracture and damage, right? So you got to go through some linear process of logical explanation by which it then remembers that it's possible and doable and all of these things that it once remembered that it's no problem. Now that it forgot from that point of the point of view of separation that it's possible, it has to bring itself back into that understanding gradually. So all of that being said, telling ourselves the technological story would be a perfect way of making anything possible, because we now, it took a while. Like, imagine, like, first you have to understand, what electricity is, that's even possible. Understanding what the laws of physics, what science is, that's even possible. You then proceed to discover what's called computation, that's possible. You then get used to that idea, and now you know that you can simulate things and you can mimic things and you can simulate environments, and now that's possible. Okay, well then all of that was just told step by step, so you now can entertain that anything is possible. Until that point, you couldn't fathom anything being possible, because in the real world we still know that there's limitation, and the laws of physics are a real thing, and if you jump off a building you die and all that stuff, right? But now if you go into a simulation, you can believe anything. If I tell you it's a simulation, just realistic one, you're not gonna be weirded out that you can fly, right? So imagine you come to my place. I think I told this on the live chat once, but I really like this analogy. Like, you come to my place 10 years from now and I'm like, yo, I got to show you this new thing. It's fucking crazy. And then I like, here, put this on. And you put it on and you're like, okay. And I'm like, okay, what you're seeing right now is fully simulated. And you're like, what? No, this doesn't work. You're like, no. This is a simulation. Like this, I know you think it's the room. It isn't. And then I like jump up and I start hovering in the room. You're like, holy shit. And then you're like, okay. And then I'm kind of explaining to you what you're supposed to do in your brain to make it happen. And then you manage to do it. And then you jump up and you hover. And then I fly out the window and you're like, what? And then I come back and I'm like, okay, now you try. And then you're like, no, I'm scared. And then we talk about it and whatever. And then you're like, okay, I'll try. And you hover. And then we're going to go a little bit out of the building. And then you go back because you're still scared. And you're like, okay, I'm ready. And then we go out and we fly over the city. And you're like, holy shit, that's insane. We go back. We land in the house and you go, dude, that was crazy. And you're like, wait, where's the thing? I'm like, there was never a thing. We could always fly. So all this thing was all this whole thing was just to convince you that it was always possible, basically. And that would make perfect sense to me.
That was one of my questions. I'm like, all right, I come over at one point, do I put the helmet on or do I put the Neuralink in? You just show up and then that starts happening. I was like, okay, so how do you integrate into the simulated reality? And you're saying, well, no, we've always been in it.
We've always been in it. It's just a matter of how much you can accept that is possible. And then just like we were talking about the placebo yesterday, right? Like, why is it 18 to 33% effective? And then if you make a more aggressive intervention, it goes up to like 52% because you believe it more, right? So now if you believe it to a full degree, if I tell you, if there's no way I can convince not just you, but probably your genes, because your genes are also carrying knowledge, right? So your genes kind of know that the laws of physics are what they are. So you can think of the knowledge stored in the genes as kind of like a fundamental belief system of your body that what must be true, right? That even if your mind is capable of overriding some of it, just by saying, look, I'm going to put a parachute, so I have a logical explanation as to how I potentially going to survive this jump of a plane from a plane. But then if I want to convince you that it's possible for you to fly, that's too high of a bar, right? But if I now explain to you what computers are, and you get used to that idea, and then I explain to you what a simulation is, which is just a computationally rendered environment, I'm like, well, look, this is a game, so anything goes. We can code whatever we want, right? And you're like, okay, I get it, I understand. So now you relax your system to believe that that is possible inside of this thing that you believe that is like a thing that we coded for. So therefore, it has a logical explanation as to why it's possible. So now your brain relaxes into it, but it was always the case. It's just that the conviction wasn't there. So in that sense, the mind is the universal thing. It's the prior thing. And anything that the mind can entertain happens. And that is the mind of God, essentially.
Speaking of mind of God, that reminds me of what Jesus said, ye of little faith, why did you doubt? It's when he was walking on water in the middle of the sea, and he called Peter out to him. Peter got off the boat. He was able to walk on water, but then he was like, holy shit, I'm just a man. How the hell am I walking on water right now? And he started to sink. And that's when Jesus reached down, pulled him up, and said, ye of little faith, why did you doubt? Because when he didn't doubt himself, a normal man could walk on water.
Cartoons know all about it. If you don't know you're in the air, you're not falling.
Exactly.
It would be hilarious if Jesus actually slapped him right after that sentence. Ye of little faith, why did you doubt?
But yeah, I mean, that story's been around for thousands of years. It's like we can literally walk on water if we have 0% doubt that we can.
Yeah, and again, you know people walking on hot coals, right? And literally your skin is not being damaged. You now, as I don't know if you know this, but there's like they ran this experiment where they brought this hypnotist, like a hypnosis expert, and he basically convinced people before serious procedure on their teeth that it doesn't hurt. And you could just sit there with no anesthesia and just have like a crazy procedure and not be in pain. And, like that just tells you, like, straight up, you can turn off whatever it is that you convince it's supposed to happen, pain and things like that. And again, you start dancing with a very weird line of logic when you're talking about like physical things. Like, okay, well, what if you cut your arm, you can regrow the arm? Yeah, that's a high bar. But I do believe that it follows the same trajectory. You just need a much more aggressive convincing, so to speak, to be able to believe that that's actually possible.
Yeah, there's those accounts of like people that see the Buddhist monks or whatever that slice their palm or whatever, and they wipe the blood away, and it's like instantly healed type stuff.
That I've never heard of. That's kind of crazy. Also, I didn't realize that the guy who said, "Are you talking about Jesus and his miracles?" We were just talking about. You missed it, but his handle is Elon Motz. That's really funny.
Oh wow,
that's awesome. What if that's Elon too? What if we're all Elon? Holy shit!
He's the prime consciousness.
What if we're all Elon? We're just all software, little softwares in Elon's program.
Holy shit! This was all a simulation
by Elon. The laws are Sigma. Oh. Thanks, Dylan. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's really hilarious. But who knows, man? But I like it's very clear. I remember when I was in college, I had to write a paper about meta-analyses, and I actually found out by doing that one of the biggest meta-analyses ever made about anything. Well, actually, no, one of the biggest one was about talent versus training, which was also interesting. Which is that the talent actually doesn't exist. Did you know that? And basically, if you practice, it nullifies any kind of talent. That doesn't matter what your starting point is. But one of the biggest ones was about pain. So there's a whole field of study, I forget what it's called, but basically of like the unexplained pain. Like there's doctors that specialize in this, right? And what they found out is that if you aggregate across all humans, like if you collect all the data, what you discover is that for an individual, that you can't show that in an individual, but you can show it across people. So if you compare all the people in the world that have serious injury, so first, if you compare all the people in the world that have no visible injury of any kind, but unimaginable pain that literally they can't function, and then you compare it to all the people that have visibly major injury that should cause them a particular pain, but it doesn't at all. Basically, it sums up for the ultimate caused pain across all these individuals to zero. And what they discovered is that the actual instance of pain is not caused by any kind of injury or disfigurement or whatever. It's caused by a particular valve in the brain that sends these signals that allows for them to pass. So you can actually bypass that by convincing yourself it doesn't hurt. And that's how people, like I just described with the dentist, they do it. They can just convince you it doesn't hurt. You know how David Blaine puts the needle through the arm?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you're actually doing that. But you can convince your body that it's not supposed to bleed. And I guess that's what you were saying with the wound, right? So a similar thing. But that's like real. You can actually do that. Effie. Yeah, you missed that part of the conversation. The Ubermensch. You missed that part of the conversation. We're talking about Elon the whole conversation. Okay. Well, listen, guys, it's 9 p.m. here. I started late today, so it was my fault. But tomorrow we're going to do a little earlier, I believe. And thank you, everybody, for joining daily. The business, you're the man. Always love when you come by. I don't know if you can join tomorrow, but it would be great to have you as always.
Yeah, what time are you planning on getting started?
I'm going to try tomorrow, do around 5, 6 the latest. We'll see. LA time.
All right.
All right, guys. Good night, Jin. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Check out my YouTube channel, Dango Thoughts, to all the newcomers. And we're here daily talking about all kinds of fun things. Thank you so much for joining. Peace and love, everybody.
Peace.
See you, YouTube. It was great to have you. Thank you so much for joining. See you tomorrow.